Welcome to another episode of an intimate conversation with women of color. I am your host, Deneen L. Garrett, and today's guest is Dr. Carol Parker Walsh. She is a career strategist and executive coach. Dr. Carol, tell us more about you.
Wow. Well, it's so funny when I get these questions. I always want to start it like it was a cold winter day when I was born. I'll just give you a little bit about my background. Well, first of all, I'm a mother of two, young adults, which I'm excessively proud of them both, and I'm happy to be their mom. But I was a labor and employment attorney for 10 years, practiced in Chicago, and then concluded practicing in the Pacific Northwest. I've been an HR director, an organizational consultant, and then went back for my doctorate, focusing in organizational development and human development, where I started doing a lot of work with organizations, doing diversity development, organizational consulting, a lot of executive coaching, team development, training leaders, creating programs to train and promote people into the first time level of leadership and into senior level leadership positions. And then in academia, I taught and directed leadership programs and trained the next generation of people who were coming into academia, into the workplace in leadership roles before I decided to launch my own practice at the precipice of my 50th birthday after going through a divorce and actually a near fatal car accident, and decided that I really wanted to work with women and helping them to fearlessly take control of their life and careers, particularly women at midlife, and who are dealing with so many challenges and are trying to come back into their own, and to really support them in whatever their next iteration of their life and career was, whether it be promoting into where they are, transitioning into something completely different, or starting an absolutely new venture like I did into entrepreneurialism. So, and that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's awesome. And we have some similarities. So I retired in June from a 20 plus year career in corporate, and I did work in the diversity and inclusion space as well as talent development. So you
Mm.
mentioned human development. So tell me a little bit about what human development is.
Yeah, well, human development looks at how we discover our identity and who we are over the course of our lifespan.
Okay.
So, studying a lot of human developmentalists and psychologists who talk about how we figure out who we are. So, my focus was really around identity development along the intersection of race, gender, and more recently, I've been looking more around the intersection of race, gender, and age, and how that impacts how we figure out who we are, how we make decisions in life, how it impacts our self esteem and our self awareness, and how we just kind of move forward in life.
So what's something that just stood out to you that you had no idea that was, a situation?
In terms of the understanding of identity development,
Yeah.
that type of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I think the thing that was, I think I knew this intuitively, but through understanding it and studying it, just understanding that when you look at human development and human development literature, it's very patriarchal and very white. And so there's not a lot of room for or understanding of how these principles apply to others who are not, maybe wealthy, middle class to wealthy, white, European kind of background. And a lot of the literature out there does support or it studies that type of phenomena. And so for me, that was relatively surprising, which is why I chose to look at that literature, but look at it in connection through a lens of structural inequity and how the understanding of our historical legacy and how we live as women and as women of color in a very racially and gender biased system, and how that impacts our development. So while one group of people may go this path and make these decisions, we have to look at why it doesn't work the same with another population of people, and understanding that the influence of all of the societal messages that we get that are framed very patriarchally in a very imperialist kind of system, that we have a little bit more challenge and struggle to be able to step into owning and embracing who we are and our identity, and stepping into the power and significance that we have to offer the world.
Yeah, and you know what? And as you're talking, I'm thinking how you've gone deeper into representation matters, because it truly does.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
yeah, so your work goes deeper into that, and come, with the research, et cetera, to really point that out. And also I was thinking about, for me, I pay attention to what I see, right? I'm paying attention to corporations, looking at their diversity page. What does that look like? you know,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
it baffles me often. And what I've seen just this past week is that some of the pages, they're not people of color. So I'm just
Yeah.
wondering, what type of diversity program do you have where you don't have people of color, and or even looking at board, their board structure and then their leadership structure. So that is something that definitely stands out to me, and I know it
Yeah.
stands out to a lot of other people, and that's why you're doing the work that you're doing.
Well, and you always have to even go a layer deep, because even the ones that have pictures of diversity,
Mhm,
it still
mhm.
doesn't mean it represents what's on the inside.
Correct.
So, I always tell people, listen, go look at a company, go onto LinkedIn, click on people and see who work there. And that'll tell you really if their representation matches the beautiful pictures of diversity that they have on their website.
And you know what, that part, because that's the other thing, like, oh, they have that picture. And and that's the other piece to it too, because they will have that picture, but it's so obvious that is just a
Right.
picture, right? It's just, oh, we're just gonna put this here, to kind of fake that we're,
Yeah.
into that and that we support that. But yeah, absolutely. If you look at the people and you still don't see, then yeah, that is definitely telling. The good
Yeah,
thing
and
is,
if you don't see people in higher echelons of
right,
leadership, right?
right,
Because then again, the other level too is that you look around and everyone of color is in lower level positions, but when you
yes.
go into the C-suite or to higher level positions, you're just not seeing the representation, and that to me is the worst problem.
Right. And that is definitely something that I noticed the other day. Again, doing this, looking through some pages, I saw exactly what you just described. So, yeah.
Hmm.
And I was going to
Hmm.
say, the great thing is that's good work for D&I professionals if the company is actually serious about making changes. But that's a
Yes,
whole nother
yes, and
conversation,
that's
right?
yes, yes, yes.
All right. So we're here to
Well,
focus on.
well said.
Right? So we're here to focus on women of color and elevating our voices. And you help professional women to stop hiding in the shadows of their brilliance, unapologetically live life on their terms, and do the meaningful work they love. So, what are some techniques that will help women of color do this and tap into their power and voice?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the first step is to really understand, recognize, and embrace the talents and skills that you bring forth. We tend to, as women, undermine ourselves and underestimate our talents, right? One of the exercises that I have my clients often do is what I call my hundreds list. And I'm just like, take a sheet of paper and write down 100 of your accomplishments, the things that you are proud of, the wins, the successes, the things that you've done over the course of your life and career. And if people can get past 35, that's pretty much a high number.
Yeah.
But when I push them on it, right, and have them work a little bit more and push a little bit more, they can eventually get there. But most people actually get stuck at around 10,
Mhm.
because we just never take into consideration all the brilliance that we put forth. We take it for granted. We
Mhm.
think it's nothing special. We think, well, can't anyone do that? So it doesn't mean I'm special because I know how to do that. So the problem for us is that we completely undermine and underestimate the value and significance that we bring. So the first thing you want to do is to start owning that, start seeing it, like get it out there so that you can look at it and actually see that you do have something of value to contribute. We get these messages, and this is why, I do this work in tandem with understanding these societal things that impact us,
Mhm.
because we have spent so much of our time with this message that we got to do better, we got to outdo, we have to not sit on our laurels. We got to do twice as good as everybody else. We have to show up. So we're always in this forward motion of trying to one up and be better, that we never stop to look back to say, I've accomplished this. I've done this. Yes, I have 2 or 3 degrees, like that's not it, but we'll say like, yeah, but other people have 2 or 3
Right?
degrees, right?
Exactly.
But that's phenomenal that you had the wherewithal to actually go through that course of study and successfully go through it. Yes, well, I did, I was a big contributor to the fact that my company landed this multi-million-dollar deal, but it wasn't all me. But you contributed to it,
Exactly.
right? If you weren't there doing the work that you were doing, it would have never succeeded. I'd love to use Katherine Johnson from Hidden Figures as a great example, right? She wasn't in the rocket. She didn't launch off. She didn't get to the moon, but it was her calculations that made it happen. But it
Yes.
would be so easy because she was hidden and people don't talk about that. But it would be so easy for, even if she were to think, well, but I wasn't the one that actually was I wasn't piloting. And oh, there were so many other people who were involved. Absolutely, there were other people involved, but it was her calculations, it was her contribution that actually put a man up there in space, right? And we're so afraid to say that. Like we'll say, well, I was involved, as opposed to my work put a person in space,
Right?
right? So
I
taking
did that.
ownership. Exactly, I did that. That would not have happened had I not been involved,
Mhm.
right? So it's so one is acknowledging what you bring to the table, but two, it's owning the value of what you bring to the table.
Yes, definitely. Are you there?
Yeah.
Oh, so I'm like, did you get frozen? Like, because it's beautiful
No.
technology. So we have, the embrace your talents. We have owning your value,
Mm-hmm.
and then where else from there?
And then from there, the next step would be to make sure you're amplifying them. So once you know them and you feel confident in them, is to make sure that you're letting people know. And through that process, I do a lot of personal branding as part of the work that I do. So it's, how are you showing up in the digital space, right? What does your LinkedIn profile look like? Are you creating articles? Are you creating thought leadership that's putting your knowledge and value out there so people know that you're the one that could bring this to the table, right? So it's kind of like, if a tree falls in the forest but no one's there, like, doesn't make a sound kind of
Yeah.
thing, right? So you could be brilliant, but if nobody really knows it, if the people that you want to impact, your target audience, your potential employers, people that you want to know of what you bring to the table, if they don't know all of the greatness that you have to offer, then it almost doesn't really matter. So
Yeah.
you want to position your thought leadership in a way that people can understand it. So I always tell people LinkedIn is a perfect place to start doing that. If you have your own website, even better. But if
Mhm.
you don't, LinkedIn could be built like your own website so that you can self promote and market all of the genius that you have out there. Use it to write articles, right? It doesn't have to be a 2,000 word article. It could just be your thoughts around what you believe the way things should be, based on your experience, based on your talent, based on your skill sets and education, right? And so just putting yourself out there and kind of amplifying, if you will, your voice so that other people can see what you have to offer is a huge part of the process as well.
Yeah, these are, I mean, amazing tips to tap into your power and voice, right? It's that you can control it. Like you said, LinkedIn, like I'm a huge LinkedIn person. I'm a LinkedIn creator. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking at a podcast festival next week on a panel talking about leveraging LinkedIn and our strategy. So I'm definitely a
That's awesome.
that. Thank you. So I'm definitely a proponent of
Yeah.
that. Now, would you say, at a surface level, what comes to mind for me is we don't do these things because at some point we were taught to be humble. Um,
Yes.
and I'm thinking just from this conversation, for what you said earlier, it goes deeper. right? So why were we told
Yes.
to be humble? Why were we told not to speak up, not to, and brag? You know what I'm, people
Right.
brag is such a negative thing. No, it's not, because again, if you don't tell folks, they don't know. So,
Exactly.
in your
Exactly.
research and your experience, your expertise, why do we have a problem with this?
Yeah, well, it really comes from safety,
Mm,
right? So a lot of the times throughout the legacy of our history in this world, we were taught to be quiet, to play small, to not draw attention, because it literally was a safety factor, right? We think of places like Tulsa that got burnt down, right? The Black Wall Street. We think about Rosewood and other communities that when it seemed like we were leveling up
yeah,
and showing up, not even showing off, but just
right.
showing up in our
Mm,
Black excellence, what would happen? And so when you have those experiences in our DNA, it teaches us to like play small. Don't show up big because it's a safety factor. Now, today, it's not, we don't have to fear that in the corporate space as much as, or in the ways of like losing our lives that it was the case back then, but it still feels that way, right? So when we get met with opposition, when we get silenced in a room, when we get talked over at a meeting, when we're told, by our boss or the CEO comes into our office and tells us, ask us why maybe we seem to be emotional or we seem to be a little more animated than usual, right? We get these microaggressions or these subtle little hints that we are kind of showing up a little bit too big and playing a little bit too strong. So we get these messages back to us that it's not okay, that it's not safe, that no, we won't lose our lives, but we could potentially lose our livelihood. And that's why it's really hard for us to do it. But if more of us would really work through getting over that and owning our voice and really speaking out and challenging the status quo. And honestly, I will say today, more than any time in our history, we are equipped and prepared. And I think the system is ready for
mm,
us to take that place and to stand up. Since George Floyd, a lot
yes,
of things have shifted. And I
absolutely.
think now is the time not to back down, but to take those steps forward to be able to reformulate, re-educate, the people around us so that we can have a voice, so that we can show up powerfully. With the Crown Act passing, it being okay to wear our natural hair in the workplace, that law is being passed state by state by state and gaining a lot of momentum. So we're finding that there's a lot of things that are taking place that are making it okay for us to show up authentically. And when people start challenging us, to actually challenge them back so
Right.
that they can learn and that they can grow in their own development, so that there truly can be a place of belonging for everyone and not just for the mainstream or the majority.
Yeah, I had an experience where a manager critiqued my social media, if you will. And the key is it's my social media. And
Mm-hmm.
he didn't really go into detail as to what his concern or concerns were. So I just reached out to a couple people and I said, hey, when you look at my social media, like what sense are you getting? And they each said that, you care about other people, you're uplifting other people, which is my intentionality. And on the flip side, even if I were talking about myself, so what? This is my
Right.
place to do that, right? Like what we're talking about. This is my opportunity to use my voice, to use my power, to speak about myself. And so what? I really
Yeah.
didn't understand, where that person was coming from. I did not challenge, I did not push back. I just reached out to other people to get their thoughts. And their thoughts
Mm-hmm.
were in alignment with what my intentions were. And again, based on our conversation, what we're talking about, so what? It's my
Right.
space. I'm amplifying
Yeah.
me. Because you're not, obviously,
Yeah.
you're too busy trying to control what I'm doing
Exactly.
personally.
Exactly. And that is such a great example of what we have to guard against, because when that happens, and it does happen,
Yeah.
we get questioned or someone will ask us a question or, say, make an assumption or that we're doing something through their comments. And so often what happens is we internalize that and start thinking, what did I do wrong? Like it must be me.
Yeah.
And what I always tell people do to tell people to do is to question them, to say, well, tell me, what are you seeing that is uncomfortable, right? I always say, come from a place of curiosity. When someone says something to me, I always respond back with, that is so curious. I'm just wondering, why do you feel that way?
Right. Right.
What made you want to say that? Why are you thinking XYZ?
Mm-hmm.
Why did you feel the need to come and share that with me? I'm just
Right.
curious,
That
right?
part.
Never confrontational, but always from curiosity. And 9 times out of 10, it usually stops people in their tracks because people are so used to putting their stuff on you
Yes.
and having you take it up and walk away with it. And
Yes.
what I encourage us to do is to hand it right back and
Yes.
have them do the analysis. Like, well, instead of saying, oh, I hear what you're saying, or I agree, or let me go take a look at that, say, oh, that's interesting. I'm curious. Why did you say that? What makes you think that?
Right.
Where are you coming from with that? I'm just
Right.
curious.
And I love that, right? Because I did not, right? Instead I came up with my own, which I'm sure it was correct, right? What I
Oh,
thought.
yeah,
But let's take away what you think and actually, find out, right? And put
absolutely.
it back in their course. So that is definitely something for us to
Yes.
do, is to ask
Yes. We have to
questions.
stop owning
Yes.
other people's
Yes.
stuff,
Yes.
owning their thoughts, owning their feelings, owning their beliefs, owning their fears, owning all of their stuff, because that is what, instead of working through it themselves, they want to put it on you and say, well, you're the reason
Mhm.
I'm feeling this way, therefore you need to change. And it's like, no, you're feeling that way because you're a human being that's having feelings. I have no control over how you think and feel, right? You have control over how you think and feel. So I invite you to entertain your own thoughts and
Ab-
feelings, and not
Entertain
through
your own
me.
thoughts, right?
Right. Exactly.
Entertain.
Exactly.
Sit over in a corner with your thoughts,
Yes, and
feelings,
contemplate.
and
Yes.
contemplate. Have several seats. Yes,
Right,
live it on.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
so I want to pivot a little. I love this though. I want to pivot a little bit. I honor my late sister, author and poet Soul True, by asking about dreams deferred, which is the title of one of her books. Please share a dreams deferred moment.
Oh, that's an interesting question, because I don't believe in living, in regret. I believe that everything that I have done and every step I have taken, every decision I make, I just believe this strongly, has been of value and of necessity to lead me to where I'm at today.
Yeah.
It's given me lessons and things to grow from, to learn from, to think back and reflect on. And I just choose never to want to look back to think, oh, I wish, or if I, or could have, should have, or, I went that path. So I don't think that way. Um, you know, in terms of a dream deferred. And also, I also believe very strongly that we have so much more life to live. So any dreams that I may have, I still feel very much empowered to embark upon them at
Hmm.
any moment in time in my life. That I don't think that just because I'm almost 60 that, oh, well, I think, wow, I have so many more years ahead to do so many more
Right?
amazing things. And every day and every year, I can make a decision to say, I'm going to try this.
Mm.
I could totally stop my business and decide I want to do something completely different. Like, all that is available. And I
Yes.
think, for me, that is when a dream is deferred, is when you feel like you don't have the options,
Hmm.
that when you feel like it's too late for me, or I'm too old for that, or, I should have done that, then,
Hmm.
and I don't have that much time left. That to me is how you defer dreams, is when you believe that you can no longer dream, and that you no longer have the opportunities to, like, go after and live your best life in the way that makes sense for you.
And I love that. I love that. And that's really, why I made the decision to retire when I did, because I wanted to go ahead and just start living fully, right? I wanted to start living my
Yes.
dream lifestyle. And so for me, I had to decide what that was. And and it evolves, right? So what it was
Yes.
last year, I've added to it, right? This year I'm going bigger, you know? And so
Yeah.
that's what my focus is. I empower women of color to live a dream lifestyle. And you're talking about how
Yes.
you live, which is basically you're living your dream lifestyle. You're choosing to live now. And, you know, if you want to do this thing, there's still time to do that thing. And that's a beautiful way to approach life. Like there's time. And, you know,
Totally.
you have choices. So, you know, talk a little bit more about what a dream lifestyle is for you, what it means to you, and how you are living a dream lifestyle. So beyond, you know, like, oh, you know, I'm choosing to do this today. Tell us a little bit more, go a little deeper.
Yeah, that's a great question. That is such a great question. And I think it's a question that everyone needs to ponder and answer, right? Because it's totally different for everyone else. For me, it is freedom. Like freedom is my mantra. So for me, it's the freedom to be able to create because I'm such a creator. I love creating content and information and articles and materials and videos. I'm I think by nature, fundamentally, I'm a teacher, right? So I love to learn something and then give it back and then to teach and share so that other people can benefit from it. So for me, it's having the freedom to be able to be creative, to impact, to touch lives, to share information, and to be instrumental in helping other people along their journey to make the best possible decisions that they can make for their life. So as long as I'm able to do that, and I say that I'm hoping what people are hearing is that I'm not saying a title, I'm not saying running a business, I'm not saying it's a job, right? It's not tied to any external thing. It's completely intrinsically motivated and internally driven. And when I work with women about trying to find your genius, find that thing you're meant to do in the world, this is what I'm talking about. It's like, what does it mean for you to be able to realize and operate, in your dream and in your genius? Because knowing that about me, what that does is open up opportunities for me to do exactly what I said in a multitude of ways, right? Everything that I said, I could do it as a lawyer, I could do it as a teacher, I could do it as a trainer, I could do it as a podcaster, I could do it in organizations, I could do it for myself, right? As long as these tenets that I just talked about are being able to be lived and operated, as I could, if I could be free to be able to teach, inform, motivate, and inspire, and encourage other women to take control of their lives and step into their dreams, I can do that in so many different ways. And because I know that, I'm not limited
Mhm.
to just a job or just a thing, right? And it gives me so much more choice and opportunity in my life, which is incredibly exciting.
Yeah, and you know what? I remember a mentor a few years ago, you know, saying to me, like, I'm like, oh, I want this particular title. And she's like, well, why do you want that? And she pushed me to focus on what I wanted the job to be, the career to be, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to accomplish. And so I take that approach today. Like this is how I
Yes.
want to live, right? And so, you know, for me, I'm like, you know, praying and I'm like, I'm attracting and manifesting. This is how I want this dream lifestyle to look. Now, however you decide to manifest that, I'm open to that. So we get out of boxes when we do that, right? When we really focus
Yes.
on, well, what do you want that life to look like? So think about that and then back into it, right? And then you're open to
Yes.
so many different
So
opportunities
many
to be
things.
able to realize that. Yeah.
Yeah. I talk about the 5 whys. So
Mhm.
anytime you say the one thing, just ask yourself why. Like just like the person that worked with you, like you want that title. Well, why do you want that title? And then when you answer that question, why is that important? And then just if you get down to like 5 whys, if every time you answer the question, you ask yourself another why, you'll get to the heart and soul of what really matters, right? Because we're so used to kind of being superficial and, pulling out things that sound right and seem right. But when you go deeper, you really get to the heart of what really matters to you and what's important to you. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ultimately, I would love to. I'm thinking about, my kids are like, no, but I would love to move and live overseas for a while, just live in Europe for a little bit, and I think that's on my agenda in the next couple of years. I've been looking at places to just like put up shop and just like kind of experience life from a different perspective for a while.
What's number one on your list?
In London,
Yeah.
um, primarily because, I know the language,
Right?
Right, but being there, it allows you to like take quick jaunts to like Paris or Scotland or other places, relatively quickly. So I thought about Italy because I've gone there a few times, and they speak enough English, I think you could survive,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love going over there. My daughter studied abroad in Scotland, and she loves there, and she's always been talking about going back there. So I think, somewhere in that area. I love the history, I love the culture, and just to be someplace different for a while, I think always opens you up to a variety of perspectives and ways of thinking.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm with you on that. I can see myself not necessarily like living, but maybe spending, time in different places. Just,
Yeah,
and I want to spend a little time here or there for those different perspectives. And just because we can, right? Because that's how
just
we
because we can. Yeah,
because we can.
totally. Yep,
So,
exactly, exactly.
so before we wrap, what would you like to leave the guests with?
Oh, there is a quote by F. Scott Fitzgerald that I love that talks about, and I'm going to paraphrase this horribly, but basically he says that the quote is something like, if you're unhappy with where you are in your life, I hope you have the courage to go after whatever it is that does make you happy, right? That I hope you have the courage to throw it all out in terms of where you are now and go after what matters to you, right? And so I horribly paraphrase it, but it's one of my favorite quotes because that, to me, that's what it's saying, that it's never too, and in the quote, he says it's never too late to start over. It's never too late to go after your dreams. So definitely, if you feel you're not on the right path, have the courage to just go after what makes sense for you. Ask yourself what matters, and then let that be your priority.
I love that. And what a great way to end. So, Dr. Carol Parker Walsh, I have truly enjoyed this conversation. I thank you for lending your voice to an intimate conversation with women of color, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
You're welcome.